there are multiple challenges, but I think that the most important has to do with finding out who must be invited to talks, how to reach a common agreement, which is significant because the more parties you have, the smaller the common agreement is going to be, which is a significant basis to be able to have a peace agreement. And ultimately, I think the most important challenge of these groups is to make sure that they don't all become spoilers during peace implementation. The more groups there are usually in a conflict zone, the more chances that the peace agreement is going to be challenged militarily by one or the other group. You know, we've come a long way. Back in the early 2000s, when I began my professional career, it was still a big question whether militias should even be invited to dialogue with governments. Governments used to always try and cast militia, frames them as either criminals or terrorists in an attempt to delegitimize them and to basically promote the idea of a military solution. So we've come a long way. Nowadays, the question is not whether to engage with them. Now, the question, however, is which ones to engage with. And that's where it's not just their objectives, but it's also their methods that can affect whether you can engage with them or not. So, I mean, we have a tendency to think in terms of objectives. And of course, for example, states which are very keen on their own territorial integrity will have difficulty engaging with militias that want to break the state, so separatist militias. Increasingly in the world, we have states that have a problem with militias that espouse Islamist ideologies. Why? For a number of reasons. Because the Islamists, at least the governments facing them, say, do not accept any kind of compromise, and also because from Western perspectives, we worry about the fact that Islamists do not respect some of the issues that are very important normatively for us, such as diversity, inclusivity, what have you. However, I think that the experience of a lot of non-governmental organizations that work in the mediation field show that it's not the objectives of groups that prevent them from engaging in dialogue. And in fact, there are a lot of organizations today that talk to what we would call extremist groups and engage in fruitful dialogues with them. What is more important is the behavior of the groups. Are they groups that are willing to make moves that actually signal their seriousness? Are they willing, for example, to talk to people who disagree fundamentally with them? Are they willing to commit not to basically kill or maim opponents in their midst? Are they willing to respect ceasefires? And I think that if we move the focus away from the objectives and we look at the behaviors, then we can engage in dialogue. And of course, engaging in dialogue does not commit you to continuing the dialogue, but at least it's a first step. And then you can continue the dialogue based on the way in which the other party behaves when it's sitting at the table and talking to its counterparts. It was a very unique experience. So the standby team of mediation experts are between 6 and 8 experts chosen by the UN to support peace processes. And I like to call them Jacks and Janes of all trades, because basically they're there to support research, to help build capacity and do trainings, but also to go on the ground and support mediators. And they sometimes themselves end up being involved in negotiations. So the range of things you do on the standby team is quite diverse. One day you could be in New York talking to the Secretary General and directors at the Department of Political Affairs. The second day you can be in Mali, in the Central African Republic, in Libya, talking to armed groups and helping design strategies to bring them to the table. So it's an experience that I think changes one's perspective, and for an academic to be able to come so close to the ground, I think was a privilege. Now, it came with challenges. And I will say that the challenges that were most relevant from my perspective were both the issue of gender and I would say, the requirements that academics often put upon themselves. So the world of the UN is a very fast-paced world. You know, you're called today, 2 days later, you're supposed to be in a country. And I'll give you the example of my first deployment. I was called one evening and I was asked whether I would go to Bangladesh. There was an electoral crisis and there was a mission going from the Secretariat to try and defuse the crisis. My answer was, all I know about Bangladesh is when it became independent, how it became independent, and the fact that it is flooded almost yearly by typhoons. But I'm an academic. So when I accepted the mission, I started reading like crazy, everything I could to prepare myself. As academics, we take time, we like to be really specialized before acting or writing on a topic. At the UN, you don't have the luxury of time. So what you have to do is either work 10 times harder or actually be able to rely on networks of experts who can help you and brief you and bring you up to speed on issues. Now, the second challenge, which I think is important because, of course, you know, the discussions we've had in the last couple of days have raised the issue of gender, was the fact that being a woman is not always accepted easily in the world of mediation. And basically, you have to earn respect as a woman. I mean, at the UN, there's a rule that people don't have titles in front of their names on their cards. But because I was working in areas of the world, Africa, the Middle East, where, you know, women's expertise is often challenged, the UN made an exception for me and allowed me to put the title PhD on my card to help me overcome some of these issues. So you have to work harder, you have to be more assertive, and you also have to be strategic and diplomatic in your engagements to be able to make your expertise shine without people, you know, just seeing the woman come into the room. But once you do that, I have found that it's extremely rewarding and that you can actually build a good rapport with your interlocutors and you can be effective at your work.